right, everybody. I see people kind of filing in now, coming out of the waiting room. Welcome everyone to our first live industry insights session in a long time. For those of you who may have followed our content for years, we used to do these as live sessions every single week. But we actually looked at adopting a little bit of a different style this year where we had some of those high production studio interviews that you've seen released each week all year long, and those are going to continue to come out. But Alex and I have been talking, and I think that there's really room for both of these types of content. So what you're going to start seeing is a recurring touch point in the new year where we still jump on live. We're going to give you some of those in the moment updates of things that are happening in the industry and answer everybody's questions. So if you've never been here before, if this is your first time, my name's Josh Gregory. I'm the Vice President of Operations here at Route Consultant. And if you're not familiar with us at all, our team ran hundreds of routes across the country with FedEx in both P&D and line haul. And we really want to continue to bring this content to help new buyers who are looking to get into the space for the first time, and then always to help current contractors to help find those efficiencies in their business and find additional profitability no matter what's going on in the environment. Now, before I go too much farther, I do, as always, or at least it's been a while since I've had to do this, but I'm happy to be back doing it. I have to read a quick disclaimer before I go too much farther. So, Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Funny thing is, I used to have to say Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, and Amazon, but actually, since I've done this last, I just realized that I need to update the disclaimer because it's all FedEx Express now. Now, I'm not here alone. I'm also joined by Alex Frum, and many of you know him already, but Alex is a line haul contractor with runs across the country and a wealth of experience in this industry. So he is here, as always, for these live ones to bring us his knowledge. So, Alex, you can go ahead and say hello. I see you sitting there.
Hey, everybody. So glad to be back. I think Josh and I were talking after Orlando, and the amount of compliments that I received and Josh received by extension about hosting these, really encouraged us to return to bring these back going forward. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm really excited about today's event. This one's going to be a little bit challenging because we're going to try to talk about some math here. And I don't know how good of a math teacher I am, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we'll get into it. And as a quick reminder for everybody, if you have questions as we're talking today, there's a little Q&A button at the bottom of the window. If you put your question in there, I'll get to it. We'll make sure to address it, and we're going to have full Q&A time at the end to ask questions about anything. But as Alex is talking, it's probably easier to just go ahead and type in that question so you don't forget it. It'll go in the queue, and as we get to Q&A later, we'll make sure to address those. If you put it in the chat, I'm going to miss it. So again, use that Q&A button. And like Alex said, we're doing a little bit of math today. And if you're new to this space, or you may or may not be familiar with the fact that FedEx does actually give you some kind of reimbursement for fuel, but even if you've been in the space for years, you may not really know how that reimbursement is calculated, or more importantly, how you can leverage that information to actually improve your business. So, like Alex said, we've got him here to talk through some math and really, more importantly, like I said, how to use it. So I'll kick it over to you, Alex.
Okay, thanks. So, what we're going to be talking about today is about the fuel supplement. Okay, so in the VMR, or in the settlement statement that we receive, we are paid for different components for our work. So we have the VMR, or your variable mileage rate. That's based off of the zip code, or the location that the truck is domiciled in. You have the mileage plus rate, which is standard across every single contract. So every contractor gets paid a mileage plus rate. Then you have your fuel supplement. And then you have obviously drop and hook, tolls, any kind of flat rate. And those components are added together and multiply against the number of miles that tractor runs. The component that we're going to talk about specifically today is your fuel supplement. I am actually going to take over the screen, and I'm actually going to share a kind of basic presentation I put together to try to explain this, since, like I said, it involves quite a bit of math and references to some areas that I thought was important to show. So let me see if I can get this to work. And here I go. Okay, Josh, can you see that?
Yep, you're all good.
Okay, awesome. So this is the standard fuel mileage rate table in Schedule C on page 3. So this is the one for just normal operations, not Western combinations or triples. So this is what you get paid off of for both your doubles and 53s. So the most important thing to understand from looking at this first is that they give you a fuel price and then they give you a per mile rate that they reimburse us at. So I've highlighted two numbers, 265 and 275. So between 265 diesel price and 275 diesel price, you're going to get compensated at 0.2095 cents per mile. Okay. So it's not a weighted average. It's not an average of those prices. If you buy fuel and your average fuel price is 268, you're going to get compensated at 0.2095. That's the first thing to understand. I'm sure there might be questions on this. I will answer every single question that anybody might have about the fuel table afterwards. The other thing, if fuel goes down below 255, this whole table actually exists all the way down to a buck 25 roughly. Okay. And same way, if this table goes above $7.25, if fuel went to $10 a gallon, there is a reimbursement at that. It is actually a fixed um, table. So if you look, you can actually do the calculation 20.95 minus 19.52, and it actually gives you a 1.8 roughly, that this is 0.018 is what everything goes up at. Okay. Um,
Just a quick
yeah.
aside. So I saw that question from Andrew. For people who aren't aware, we're talking about line haul reimbursement here. This is completely different for, well, it's a little bit different for P&D, but the math and the tables we're talking about here are talking about line haul rates.
Yes. Yes. This is all line haul. As far as I know, P&D's captured in their stop pay is
Yeah.
what their
Yeah.
fuel
So
reimbursed at.
P&D has a per stop fuel reimbursement. That rate is indexed against the price of diesel fuel in a somewhat similar way, but the actual base rate is actually negotiated as a part of the rates you negotiate with P&D. It changes week to week based on the price of diesel fuel. There's more complex back to that side too, but line haul is definitely where we're focusing today.
Yeah. Now, this price is not your retail price that you buy fuel at. You are reimbursed at the OPIS price. OPIS is the Office of Petroleum Information Services. It's a government website. They post it on a weekly basis. Um, so you will actually see sometimes, I believe they post it on a Tuesday or a Monday what the prices are for the previous week. And so it doesn't actually exactly follow the settlement week that we use. It follows a different week. And unfortunately, we just have to suffer through the consequences that our week is Saturday through Friday, even though Opus is a different week. So 265 to 275, that's the Opus price of where you buy fuel based off of the zip code. So if you happen to buy fuel in Chicago, Illinois, but you run all your miles in Wisconsin, then you're getting your fuel rate set up in Illinois. If you happen to, and vice versa, if you buy fuel, if you run out of Illinois, but you buy your fuel in Wisconsin, you're going to be getting reimbursed at the Wisconsin OPIS price from wherever the zip code is that you buy your fuel. Um, sorry. So what does this mean? So this is really realistically a graph of the fuel rate, okay? So as you can see, it's a straight line. This is just taking every single one of the data points off of the table and putting it in place. Now, as you can see, the graph actually doesn't really end at zero. It's not a perfect line. You can actually solve this formula if you harken back to your kids or actually get one of your kids to explain to you what is y equals mx plus b. You can actually figure out the rate of gain and also find out what the y-intercept is. Okay. The other way to do it is just do rise over run. So you take 2 points off of the y-axis and divide it by 2 points on the x-axis. Um, the other thing on here is to understand what is the implied miles per gallon. Okay, this is what FedEx reimburses us at. They assume that based off of the fleet and the history that they have, that all trucks should be able to achieve 6.995 miles to the gallon. This changes on an annual basis. This past year, it did not change, but in the 24-25 contract cycle, this was moved to here. If you've been a contractor for a while, this has been slowly increasing up as we get more fuel efficient tractors. Just to give you a point of note, I have some tractors that average over 8 miles to the gallon. I have also a couple 2015 tractors that I am in the process of replacing, and they get less than 6.9959 miles to the gallon. Just be understanding though that if you're running a older fleet, you are actually losing money on your contract because FedEx assumes that your fleet can achieve 6.9959. My fleet average is 7.53. I do that calculation on a weekly and on a monthly basis. I take all the fuel that I buy, I divide it by the number of mile, or I take all the miles that I run and divide it by the number of gallons that I purchase on a weekly basis, and that gives me my weekly and my monthly fuel. There are also, I don't know if Haldy does it, but I know that my Ground Force and FX Fast have a calculation on their page that shows you what your fuel efficiency is. Truck Spy also has a good program to show you what your fuel efficiency. And then by extension, if you know what your miles to the gallon are, you know how much you're making off of FedEx by basis of this. So if I'm doing 7.53 miles to the gallon, I'm making a couple extra cents per mile off of my contract. And that's money going straight to my bottom line. Okay, so let's look at an example here, okay? So I'm taking a team truck, 4,200 miles per week, okay? I'm assuming that the truck gets 6.9959 miles to the gallon. The total gallons purchased that week was 643 gallons and change. The average price per gallon was 310. So the fuel supplement rate, if we go back to the table, so if we look for 310 on here, you'll find it that it's not on here, but we know that it's somewhere between 305 and 315. So I'm getting 0.2667 miles in fuel supplement. Okay, so my gross fuel cost is 310 times 643, 234, which equals $1,994.03. My total fuel supplement is $4,500 and 2667 equals $1,200.15. Now, Josh, you might ask me, well, you bought $1,900 worth of fuel, but you didn't get reimbursed for $1,200. That's because there's a portion of our fuel supplement that's already baked into the VMR. Okay. That portion is 1.7642 cents per mile. Okay. So of our VMR, if you go to your VMR table, mine is like 140, let's call it 150 and change. In there, 17 cents of that is fuel. Okay. And that's standard across all contractors. So you take your gross fuel less your supplement, 199.4 minus 1,200, you get $793. And then to understand your fuel supplement in your VMR, you take that $793 divided by your fuel efficiency times the total gallons purchased, and that gives you an idea of what that number should be. And for every contract, it should be $17 or 17 cents and change for your fuel supplement. Is everybody following along on the math?
I'm tracking.
Be having
That is
people
a
raise
lot.
their hand or something like that. But I'm hoping I'm getting a lot of thumbs up, and or I'm more than willing to answer questions after I go through the last two slides. Okay, so we're looking at all this information now. Where do we find this information in your in your settlement statement? Okay, if you go all the way down to your fuel settlement statement or your settlement statement, there are going to be two components. First, you have the fuel purchases. What was the gross amount of fuel that your truck bought during the past week? And then after that, you'll have your death and maintenance purchases. And then below that is your fuel receipts used for fuel mile settlement component. Okay, so I have two slides here. I'm taking a truck that bought all its fuel at a Flying J in Smithton, Pennsylvania. So they bought 1,452 gallons at a total cost of $425 and 87. Sorry, I take it back. They bought my apologies. They bought $1,452 worth of fuel, divided by 425 gallons, and that was an average cost of 341.58 dollars per gallon. Okay, now what am I getting reimbursed at? I'm getting reimbursed at 3.338. Okay, so on this tractor, um, I didn't buy at FedEx. I bought in Smithton, Pennsylvania. I bought it from a Flying J. I'm getting close to Opus pricing. The difference in my cost is 341, and I paid 3338. Now, you might ask me, why am I willing to buy gas here and paying retail prices versus paying wholesale? Well, that goes into your IFTA. Pennsylvania happens to have the highest taxes in the country at around 78 cents per gallon. Okay. So in IFTA terms, the IFTA works on based off of the num of where you drive your miles. So the International Fuel Tax Association says that where you buy your gas and where you drive your miles determines where you're going to pay your fuel taxes. So if I do a run from Northern Kentucky, Independence, Kentucky to Pennsylvania, I'm driving through Kentucky, I'm driving through Ohio, and I drive through Pennsylvania. So in order for me to allocate the fuel taxes to pay for the roads in Ohio, Kentucky, and Pennsylvania, what they do is they collect all the taxes and then they redistribute it. So me paying my taxes in Pennsylvania means that even though I drive maybe only 50 miles a day in this run, and I do 309 miles each leg on this run, then I'm collecting all these taxes, I'm paying these taxes, FedEx is reimbursing me based off of these taxes, and then in Ohio and Kentucky, the IFTA is reallocating that money based off of the number of miles. Now, if you think about a road, I'm going to be paying most of my taxes. I should be paying most of my taxes in Ohio. Now, Ohio has a significantly lower tax rate in for diesel fuel than Pennsylvania does. Kentucky is actually even lower. So that difference between the 78 cents that Pennsylvania pays and whatever Ohio and Kentucky is is money that's going to go to my bottom line because FedEx reimburses me at that fuel tax rate. You follow along on that, Josh?
Think so. So you're saying there's more benefit to fill up in the places that have higher taxes is
Yes.
the
Yes.
simplest way to summarize it, I guess.
Yes.
And I'm sure,
So
well, I'll let you
if
finish
you
and then I've
go,
got a question.
if you
Yeah.
do a search online, I was going to post it, but it's kind of crazy to look at.
Yeah.
If you look up diesel tax rates by state, you can on the web, they will give you a list of what is the diesel tax rate for every single state. The most expensive states to operate in or to buy diesel in are Pennsylvania, California, surprisingly Indiana, and Illinois. So where you expect, Illinois, Pennsylvania, California, I think most people expect to have expensive fuel. Most people don't think of Indiana as having expensive fuel, but Indiana happens to have quite expensive fuel as well. And then you have Virginia, New Jersey, some other states that have pretty high fuel tax rates.
Okay.
Okay. But it's important to look at this information because I'm going to give you an example here on this next slide. This is a tractor that bought fuel in multiple different locations. Now, if you know that FedEx is going to reimburse us, right? Now, is your assumption that FedEx is going to reimburse us just based off of where you buy gas or on the weighted average price that you pay for gas?
I would assume the average, but
Yes. So FedEx pays you based off of the average of all the fuel you buy. So in this example, I bought gas in Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky. Okay. So you don't get reimbursed based off of every single state. You get reimbursed based off of the average of the locations that you buy in. So if you buy in multiple locations, you're getting based off of. Now, in this example here, I have an average fuel supplement of $3.17. Now, if you go back to slide one, oh, sorry. If you go back to slide one, you would say 317, I should be getting paid at 28.10. Okay. In this example, I get paid at 28.10, but it's important to look at this example and make sure that you're getting paid what you should be. I found examples in the past where FedEx has made a mistake and has shortchanged me on my fuel supplement. In each of those situations, you need to submit a settlement adjustment to get reimbursed for your proper fuel. Also,
Yeah.
it's important to understand the FedEx price is Opus, where no matter what they pay for the fuel, they probably buy it at Opus minus, but they're going to reimburse you at Opus. So, um, if you look at the first purchase and the last purchase, right, I got an average price of $3.08 on those locations because I bought fuel in Independence, Kentucky. Um, Champaign, Illinois, and Shelbyville, Indiana, I bought gas at $3.33 and $3.12. So it's understanding where you're buying fuel and then understanding that the average of all those is what you're going to get reimbursed at.
Hmm. So it's a lot. And you can understand how FedEx could get it wrong when they've probably got some kind of formula across all of the companies, and you could understand how there could be errors. So, what have you found, though, if you're just looking at your own business, is the easiest way to try to stay on top of this? Because I imagine you could go line by line every time. Is there any faster way, or is it always manual?
I mean, so I can let me see if I can share a different page. I'm going to try to share a settlement statement with you guys.
First time back on the live webinar, and we're trying multiple different technologies. So,
Kind of scary. So I'm going to be sharing my actual settlement statement here. So this is my actual settlement statement. So, am I sharing it?
yeah, I see it.
Okay, great. So what you have here is you can see all my fuel rates, right? So in general, you should have an idea, they're not that different, except in some locations. So this is 381, I'm buying fuel in and around Memphis. This is 406, I'm in and around buying gas in Kentucky or wherever this truck happens to go. So I'm looking at those, and if it doesn't make sense, like the trucks I usually look at are like the Pennsylvania trucks, trucks that run into California. I want to make sure that I'm getting reimbursed correctly for those. Buying fuel, I mean, in those most expensive states have the most importance to me to make sure that they're getting reimbursed correctly. The low cost state, maybe, it might be off and I should probably look at those. Obviously, I just don't have that bandwidth. Um, maybe my ground force or FX Forward has a tool that can help you identify, or probably even TruckSpy has a tool that can help you identify when your fuel supplement is incorrect. But for me, I'm just eyeballing it. I'm looking at this number. I look at my settlement statement every single time. One of the first things I do, make sure I don't have any broken legs. The third party vendors can also check that, but I'm making sure that I don't have any broken legs. If I do have a broken leg, I'm trying to understand what's causing that broken leg. Two, that I'm making sure that my settlement looks correct. Is it a team run? Is it a short run? Like this one right here is a short run. So I should be getting paid more than my base VMR. Making sure that my fuel rate makes sense. Making sure that I'm getting drop and hook for all my tractors. Those are the kind of things that I'm looking for as I review it. So I always spend a good half an hour before I run my payroll, either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, reviewing my settlement statement and looking for settlement adjustments. And I average probably just to give you an idea, I average dispatching 32 to 33 trucks a day. And I generally have, so on, just on 5 days alone, that's 160 something dispatches, let alone the weekends. Um, so I'm looking for, and I usually submit 3 to 4 settlement adjustments a week.
Okay.
It's not a perfect system. It's a very manual process by FedEx. You would think it would be automated. It's not. Trips get broken every single time you get diverted on a run. That's, any single time that your run is non-standard. So your URs, if you're doing spots, or if you get diverted to another location or get asked to make an extra stop, those are things that can cause your runs to have a settlement adjustment.
And
So if you're going for a perfect example, every now and then I have a run that goes from Noki to Nashville. Okay. But every now and then I have to do a sweep through Louisville to pick up trailers. And I should be received in that situation. I should have actually 3 runs, right? I should have Noki to Louisville, Louisville to Nashville, Nashville back to Noki. Okay, so if I don't have that, that's one point I need to adjust. And then two, I need to make sure that I'm getting compensated for my drop and hook on each of those locations. Because a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm taking a full trailer and an empty to Louisville, dropping an empty and picking up another a second pup, and then taking it down to FedEx in Nashville. And so in that situation, I should be having an extra drop and hook, and it's just making sure that I get compensated for those drop and hooks.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that you're saying you do 3 to 4 a week, I think is pretty significant because I would imagine there are plenty of people, especially if you're new or just getting into the space, that don't even know this is a thing you can do. So when you're doing one of these, what's the typical back and forth process once you've submitted it?
So FedEx has actually established a set procedure online to do settlement adjustments. What I find by my experience is that each hub has a different way that they want to process it. So I have relationships with the senior admins and in my three terminals, which are Noki, Memphis, and Olive Branch, and they in general want the same. So what they want is they want to know what is the settlement adjustment. So I give the details of the run, and then I put down there what's missing. You know, Noki to Louisville, Louisville to Nashville, Nashville back to Noki, and then I'll annotate missing drop and hook or missing this leg. Like I got paid for 256 miles instead of getting paid for 168 miles and then a 90-mile leg from Louisville to Memphis. Um, and then what I'm doing is I'm attaching a number of different documents to that. I'm attaching a screenshot showing the trip history log. So if you go into Omnitrax, if you go into Motive, you can actually show the route that the truck made. So they want to see that the truck actually went from Noki to Louisville, Louisville to Nashville, Nashville back to Noki. They also want a copy of your electronic log. So you PDF the log and you send it back to them. They want to see a copy of your IVMR, your individual vehicle mileage report, and then they want the settlement statement. So those are the documents that I submit to FedEx when I submit a settlement adjustment.
Okay. Is it typically a long wait before they adjust it, or?
It depends on that senior admin, honestly, and how fast they process the paperwork. Um, they usually have to review it, then submit it to the senior line haul manager to approve, and then it goes up to PGH. There is one hub that I work in I get everything the following week. There's another hub that I work in that takes about 2 weeks to process them, and then there's another hub that takes the full 120 days to process them. And so we keep a log of every single settlement adjustment we submit, and then we follow up with them usually about 3 weeks later to with the senior admin that hasn't submitted them, and then we'll just chase them every 2 weeks until they pay it.
Yeah, I think
Sometimes I have to send a note directly to the senior line haul manager saying, "Hey, we're about to hit the 120-day mark, and I have not been paid my settlement adjustments."
yeah, I think it's helpful for people to hear that it can take a while. It's not just like they might not be getting ignored because the terminal doesn't like them, but it is important to stay on them. If you've submitted it, make sure you're following up, make sure you're paying attention to the timeline. I think this is a important revenue change that a lot of people don't properly do each week or stay on top of. And because it may feel like an individual settlement adjustment is small, but like you said, if you're doing a few of them every week, if you're noticing these changes and staying on top of it, it can have a meaningful difference in the revenue that you're making for your business.
I mean, I had one year where I submitted over $50,000 worth of settlement adjustments.
Yeah.
Um, the other time that I find that you need a lot of settlement adjustments is during peak. There's just so much volume going through that runs get dropped. And it's important to submit those settlement adjustments for two reasons. One, to get compensated, but two, to also get credit for your peak miles. What seems to happen to me, and it's not by fault, but it always seems that I'm missing a couple miles to take me over the next level to get the credit for, 10 points to tractor to 15 points of a tractor. And
Yeah.
so it's important to submit those. And the reason why I say 120 days is because that is how long you can submit a settlement adjustment that FedEx is required per the contract to reimburse. If you submit it 121st day, they do not need to reimburse you for that settlement adjustment. So keep that clock ticking. Like I said, I mean, we submit, 3 to 4 a week. We generally submit them on Thursdays because we do our payroll on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, my payroll specialist or my finance guru is sending all the settlement adjustments. So she has, it's not anybody, it's my wife. She handles all my payroll, she does all my bookkeeping, she does all my expense accounting, and she does all my settlement adjustments. And that's the thing, on Thursdays is her day to do settlement adjustments. Yeah.
I think a last question here for you before we head to open Q&A is, we talked a lot about the math and understanding the reimbursement and where different costs can line up. Is there anything that you do internally to kind of decide where the best places are to fill up, and how do you kind of push your drivers to actually fill up at the right locations?
So the first thing I've done is I've locked my fuel cards so they can only be utilized at 3 locations, Flying J, Pilot, and FedEx. I don't allow my drivers to buy from TA and Petro because you're paying wholesale price or retail prices there, and you're not getting wholesale or Opus. And then two, I made a decision a long time ago to do Flying J and Pilot versus Loves, because Loves is Opus plus two, whereas Pilot has said they will do Opus pricing. So I want that benefit, that extra 2 cents. So my drivers are only allowed to buy from Flying J, Pilot, or FedEx. Now, all my drivers who go to expensive or drive through expensive states, I specifically direct them to buy fuel in those locations. So if you run through Indiana and into Illinois, you have to buy fuel in either Indiana or Illinois. If you run into Pennsylvania, my drivers are required to buy fuel in Pennsylvania. If you drive through New Jersey, my drivers are required to buy fuel in New Jersey. And then definitely for California, all my drivers who run to Rialto have to buy fuel in Rialto. Everyone else, I don't really care because the fuel tax rate is not that big of a deal. But going to Pennsylvania and buying gas in Pennsylvania, I receive a credit every quarter from FedEx on my IFTA statement.
Yeah. Do you find that you have to actually incentivize your drivers to do it, or it's just
No, I
policy?
just tell them. I mean, they want to buy fuel at Flying J or Pilot anyway, so they can get the points. They get free drinks or free meals. I would love to do Loves. I'm actually looking at an outside vendor who says they will be able to submit my fuel receipts to FedEx to get me reimbursed on time. Um, I'm looking at a different, what they use is an RFID tag that goes on the windshield, and then you can go to Love's then and buy fuel there. And the advantage of that is it limits a lot of the risk of fuel fraud. So if my trucks have to have an RFID tag to buy fuel, then the only time they can buy fuel is when that truck is physically in the fuel island. So what happens is in the Love stations, they have a camera that captures your RFID tag, just like if you were running through a toll pass or something like that. And so then you can only buy fuel there.
Okay.
So I'm working on that. If I manage to figure it out and process it, the one part is I have to do my own IFTA in that situation. So I'm working through that issue. And if you want to do your own IFTA, the biggest issue that you have with IFTA is that you have to have a nexus, which is a business term of a reason and an amount of business for you to be able to do IFTA in that state. And my challenge is I reside in Colorado. None of my trucks run through Colorado, so I cannot do IFTA in Colorado. All my trucks in general are either based in Mississippi, Tennessee, or Kentucky, so I could do IFTA there, but you have to have a driver's license to file for IFTA, and I don't happen to have a Mississippi, Tennessee, or Kentucky driver's license. The other option is I can potentially do it in Illinois. I do not believe you need to have a driver's license in Illinois. And since my company is actually organized and originated in Illinois, because there are some beneficial um, corporate organization laws in Illinois for trucking companies, I might do it there. So I'm exploring that opportunity.
Okay. Well, I think what I'm hearing is, on the one hand, there is a lot to know about the fuel side, but I definitely think that one of the important things you've talked through is the fact that it is something that you really need to monitor. This isn't a number that you get paid from FedEx. There's nothing you can do to affect it, and there's nothing you need to do to check on it. So while there is reimbursement, there's definitely a responsibility and a money making opportunity or money saving, however you want to view it, as the AO that you need to be focused on. This should be one of the things you're thinking about, or have someone on your team who's thinking about this regularly if you want to be as successful as you should be with the money that FedEx owes
Yeah.
you for the runs you're doing.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, we've always talked about what are the four pillars that an AO has to master, right? So the three are easy. It's service, availability, and safety, and not in that order. I view safety as your number one. But the other area that an AO needs to own and is responsible for is finances. It's your job every single day to try to figure out, okay, how can I save a couple pennies per mile in my business? What can I do to make my business more efficient, more effective, and generate more P&L, more income to my bottom line? Because then at the end of the day, we all operate and we all get paid the same amount, in general to run the same runs. What makes the good contractor from the bad contractor is obviously mastering service, safety, and availability, but also can you figure out a way to be the most profitable contractor you can in your operation? And a lot of that has to go with how hard you want to work, but also it goes back to the function of, okay, where can I save a couple pennies here? Can I, is Lytics the best option for me, or can I save money by switching to Motive? You know, in Motive, can I operate without having to pay for cellular service? Because you save yourself $15 per unit per month. And at the end of the day, if you run 30 trucks and you're doing 15 unit or you're doing $15 per month per unit to pay for cellular service, that's, you know, that's what is that? 360 times 15. So you're looking at like $5,000 that's you're taking straight out of your bottom line. Okay, there's all these fixed costs that we have. We all need to pay for an accountant. We all need to pay for our registration fees. We all have to do recruiting. All those fees are captured in your mileage plus. And then you have, we all need to buy trucks, have truck insurance, have workers' comp. But all those other areas are where you can find ways to save yourself money.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, I'll leave it there for now. We're about to open it up to Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and submit it in the Q&A button, and we'll get to it in just a second. A couple of things I wanted to quickly highlight. We do have a couple of events this week. Alex is actually going to be a part of them. So if you do live local to Nashville, want to drive to Nashville, or want to get a plane ticket to Nashville, we've got two events this week. So tomorrow, if you're a new investor and trying to learn about either the P&D or the line haul space, or figure out what your next step is, that'll be all day tomorrow in our office in Nashville. And on Friday is an event focused on line haul. Alex is going to be hosting a lot of the sessions where we're talking about operations, safety, peak season, things that you need to be thinking about now for the final quarter of the year, and also to preparing yourself for being successful next year. So both of those events are free in our office, food and drink provided. So if you're in the area and aren't planning on attending and can make it out here, we do have those this week, Thursday and Friday. And then the one that I haven't got a chance to highlight live in a while, but we're just a few months, 3 months, I think now, out from the expo in Nashville on January 8th and 9th, where all contractors from across the country come together. It's our largest event of the year. We're expecting thousands of people this year. We've got a ton of people already registered, and we're still got a few months to go, but it should be a lot of fun. It'll be downtown Nashville this year. In the past, when you've been here, we used to do it at the Gaylord Opryland Hotel, but this year we are in the Music City Center downtown, so it'll be a good time for both at the event and I'm sure after the event as well. Broadway is a mere few steps away from the event center, so it'll be a good time. And again, Alex will be there for that. I'll be there for that. There'll be content all day for both days at that event, and a ton of vendors there. I'm not seeing any Q&A come in, so I was rambling. I think I gave enough time. I don't see anybody jumping in on Q&A. This is y'all are watching live, but this will be posted later. So if you have questions and are trying to go back through the math and are trying to apply it to your own business, if you can't work through the math on your own, or trying to figure it out for yourself, feel free to reach out to us. Alex and I are always happy to help kind of talk through how it might apply for you, how you might be able to apply some of this in your own business, and things you might be needing to think about when it comes to fuel. Other than that, if I don't see in the next couple days in our office, I hope I see everybody both live and whoever's watching on YouTube at our event in January. at the expo. So
And and everybody, I mean, we don't have to just answer fuel questions. If you
that's
happen to
true.
have any
Yeah,
other questions that anything about FedEx or line haul in general, feel free. I can talk about service, I can talk about safety, I can talk about availability, I can talk about peak, though everybody should already be well into their peak planning. The biggest thing right now is you need to be prepping your trucks. So if you operate in the northern climates, everybody needs to have a heater cord so you can turn over that truck in the winter because it's really hard to start an engine in in freezing temperatures. If you operate in the mountains, I have my good friend Amari on here who operates out of Utah and I think Nevada. You need to have tire chains in all your team trucks or in your solo trucks if you happen to go up into the mountains. Colorado is expecting a snowstorm this weekend. So any trucks that are trying to go through I-70 or I-80 or even I-40, you need to make sure that those trucks have tire chains. You can get your tire chains and your trailers need to have tire chains. So you need to make sure you go into FedEx and say, hey, I'm going to California, I'm going to Portland, I'm going into the mountains. I need tire chains for my trailers, and they will issue you tire chains. You just put them in your storage container and put them underneath the truck. I'd be checking my tires right now. I'd be checking my brakes right now, making sure that your trucks are all prepared for peak season. Peak season, you do not get a lot of breaks. FedEx right now is projecting year-over-year growth of anywhere between 7 and 12% for their different hubs. Peak is going to be short this year. Thanksgiving falls really, really late. I think it might be the latest Thanksgiving, that you can possibly have. So we have a short, I don't even know if we have 5 weeks for peak. We might only have 4 weeks
sure.
between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I would expect that Thanksgiving week is going to be busy, and then it's going to be extraordinarily busy the 2 weeks after peak with Black Friday on Thanksgiving and then Cyber Monday.
Cool. Yeah, I think it'll be hopefully it'll be a good, I mean, a great peak season. I think there's other things to think about there as well, but I think everything you said is accurate, and it is. If you're not already ready, this is this is the time where you should be tightening up any of that you haven't finished yet. We're headed into peak and winter, especially for those of you who get it. I'm over here like we just entered fall, so we'll see if we get more than a couple weeks of fall. But for some of you, winter is coming.
Winter's always coming. Game of Thrones, winter's coming. So keep that in mind and prepare for the white wall, I guess, or whatever what
Yeah,
is it? White
the White
wall?
Walkers,
White
the
Walkers. Prepare for the White Walkers.
yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, we'll end it on that. Alex, it's a pleasure to be here and doing this live again with you. And thanks everybody for being here live and watching afterwards on YouTube. There'll be more of these to come. Like I said, in the new year, we'll continue to put out the content as we have, in addition to these kind of recurring live sessions as well. Mark, I saw you raised a hand. If you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A. I don't know. It might be a last second one. I'll give you a few seconds to type. If not, then I'll just assume that was a wave goodbye. And we'll end it there. I don't see anything else, so I'll call it. All right. Again, thanks everybody, and we will see you all. Oh,
Oh, wait,
yes.
did he just,
He posted. Yeah, this will be recorded and posted. Yeah, we'll try to get it out tonight. It may be tomorrow, but it'll be on our YouTube page.
okay.
But thanks everybody. Thanks, Alex.
See ya.
All right.